This is our fifth video on fragments. In previous videos, we've seen how we can create a fragment infrastructure that will allow us to search for a plant, like this one, go from a search screen, so we'll say redbud, to a results screen rather, and then from the results screen to a detail screen. That's how we tend to think of mobile apps oftentimes when they live on phones, because we do have limited real estate and we have to think of these different screens as separate concepts. But the nice thing about fragments is that we can separate the concept of a screen and a layout from the management of that screen and layout. You see, if we take that same screen and we put it on a tablet, we end up with a whole bunch of wasted real estate that's really not taking advantage of that tablet. And so our goal today is to do the same exercise, but we're going to see that when we have larger real estate to deal with, we can actually have two fragments per screen instead of just one. So here I'm going to type in redbud, and this is the current state of affairs. We have our search fragment that's going to go to a list fragment that's going to show us live data with all redbuds. I'm going to click on Eastern Redbud. That's going to take me into the details fragment. The change we're going to make is we're going to take this list fragment and put it on the left half of the screen, and then take the web view fragment, which is loading now and will take a moment to load because it is on my emulator, and we're going to put that on the right side of the same screen. So let's get started. First of all, we still want the same functionality to work in the traditional phone. We don't want to change any of that. We want it to be sensitive to the hardware that we are using. And so we need to do a little bit of trickery here. So I'm going to go to the Java view, and what I'm going to do is make a layout that's specific for the tablet. So I go to Layout, and I'm going to call this New, and I'm going to say Android XML file, and we will say file, we're going to say plant master detail, or two-pane, or something like that. And let's see, for this one, linear layout's just fine. So plant master detail, I really want to call it two-pane actually, plant two-pane, that'll work. Okay, choose next. Everything's fine here, and we choose finish. Okay, we will stay pretty simple. One thing I am going to do though is I'm going to make sure that I have a linear layout that's stacking things. And I don't think it's stacking things the way I want. You see, it's giving it a vertical orientation. Okay, maybe that'll work. Let's see, or do we want to change it to horizontal? Okay, we changed to horizontal. Yeah, I like that better because we're actually going to assume this tablet's going to be used in landscape mode more often than not. So we change that to horizontal. Okay, now, one trick, if you're new to programming, you look at Eclipse right now and it is absolutely complicated because there are buttons everywhere, you don't know what to push on. Let's click in the middle, hold Control, press M. It's going to allow us to zoom up on that middle pane, and here we go. Okay, so from here what I can do is layouts and fragment, and we're going to drop the fragment first. Okay, select a fragment class. We're going to say plant results fragment, and okay. Okay, and then next to that we're going to put a frame layout. So let me drop a frame layout, and if we're lucky we should see these come up right next to each other. So okay, I'm going to save, and I'm going to go under the covers here because this is going to require a little bit of manipulation. Let's see, is this anything major? Okay, no problem, we know that. Okay, so we already have our plant results fragment here. It's the frame layout that we need to work on. For the frame layout, what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to give it an ID so that we can assign a different fragment to it at a later time. So I'm going to say Android :ID equals double quote @ symbol and then plus ID, which means, hey, can you make an ID out of this, please? Can you make one of those generated r.IDs? Okay, so @ID, and then we'll say plant _ detail _ container. Okay, and save. Now, we also want to say what weight we want to give to this because you see, oh, by the way, you see now the details actually came up. You see that the details of the plant details, which is going to be a web page here, is going to take up quite a bit of space, and we want to maximize the real estate for that. So we're going to assign some relative weights. We are going to say the fragment is going to be a weight of 1. Okay, so I'm making an Android colon layout underscore weight. You could certainly do this through the visual editor as well, but it's a lot faster doing it via XML once you are comfortable with the XML layout. Android layout. So what I recommend, if you're new to programming, if you're new to Android, is use the graphical user interface to do all these settings. But once you have a bit of experience, go under the covers like I'm doing here, because you can change things a lot quicker. It's just a kind of clunky interface to use the what we see under the covers. So, I'm sorry, to what we see on the WYSIWYG editor. Okay, plant detail container. I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to save. Okay, now here's the trick. How does it know when to pick this layout? How does it know it's a tablet? Well, Android has something built in that's going to help us there. And what we're going to do, I'm going to Control M, and you see we have this values SW600P. That is used in Android 3.2 and greater. Prior to Android 3.2, it would be values-large. And what that means is if I'm in a large resolution, I'm going to go to this file, I'm going to go to this folder, and I'm going to look for a file named refs.xml. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say new, and then Android XML file. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do basically a dynamic substitution of a layout. This dynamic substitution is going to occur when we are in a tablet or another high-resolution device. Okay, so we're going to say, yeah, resources is the element. We'll just say refs.xml. That's fine. Okay, that looks good. And I think we're good. I'm going to choose finish. Okay. Now the syntax here is a little bit tricky. Let me Control M so we can view this in high def. I can do add, and we're going to say item, and OK. Name. The name is the layout that I am replacing. So the layout that we use that we want to keep and we want to use in the normal Android phone view is the layout called, I want to say, well, let's see. We'll go up to the actual activity. Let's see. So the activity that we're going to use is the plant results manager. Okay, and what layout does this use? It uses one called r.layout.plantResultsManager. r.layout.plantResultsManager. Okay, so we want to do a dynamic swap of that because as it is right now, that only shows the plant results fragment. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say plant results manager. I'm just going to copy this. Okay, and I'm going to Alt left arrow, which will take me back in Eclipse history, back to the screen I was on before. Name, we're going to say plant results manager. Uh-oh. Results manager. I copied that into my clipboard, but it looks like it didn't take properly. Type. Okay, type is going to be layout. We're telling it, hey, I'm swapping a layout here. Format's fine. Now, the value is what we're going to replace plant results manager with. Okay, well, what's that layout that we just made? We just made a layout with 2 panes in it, and we called that plant underscore 2pane. Okay, so Control M, and I'm going to say at layout / plant underscore 2pane. Was it 2pane or 2 panes? Let's see, plant underscore 2pane. Yeah, plant underscore 2pane. I think it looks good. I'm going to Control M. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to look at what, error in XML file. Okay, that doesn't look good, so let's look under the covers and see what it doesn't like. Somehow, oh, I see what happened. It pasted my text at the top of the file. Okay, so I clean that up, and I save. Let me just make sure this looks good. The name of the layout we're replacing, it is a layout. We are replacing it with at layout and then plant 2pane. and save. Now there is one other change I do want to make before I test this out, but I want to test it out pretty soon. So I'm going to go back to the layout that we defined, the two-pane layout, and I'm a little bit worried about this wrap content for width. I'm going to change that to 0 dp for both of my frames, and 0 dp. Okay, and save. Okay, with that now I'm going to Control M, and I am going to right click and I'm going to say debug as Android application, put this on the tablet. Okay, and the tablet, that'll take just a moment to load. I'll pause while it's, well actually it looks like it's coming up pretty quickly here, so it's coming up off screen and we'll give it a moment to load. I'll pause while it's loading. Oh, see, every time I say that, then it starts to load. So our goal here is just to make sure that we have a layout that looks like something we can work with, really to make sure that we haven't broken anything. And now I know I do have a few I know I do have a few breakpoints going, so I'll play through those relatively quickly, maybe even disconnect the debugger while this is running. Okay, so notice what we have here. We have the list occupying only 1/4 of the screen because we gave it a weight of 1. We gave the rest of the screen a weight of 3. And so essentially, that means that our screen is divided up into 4 parts, and the list gets 1/4 of that. The detail view gets 3/4 of that. That's how we're apportioning it, and that's what that layout weight means. It means sum up all of these weights and then make a fraction. So 1 plus 3 is 4. This gets 1/4. This gets 3/4. Okay, deep breath. And again, we want this to continue to work in our phone. We want no change in behavior on our phone. What we need to do now is go to that Plant Results Manager, which is the activity this is the activity that is defining, it's managing our layouts, our results and our detail layouts. So we need to do a little bit of math here. We have a couple of valid options that we can use. We need to figure out, do we have are we in two-pane or are we in a single-pane mode? One option we can do in this refs.xml is we can add another element. We'll say bool name equals has two panes, something like that. We could do it with underscores or maybe just say two-pane, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and then we can give that a value of true. Okay, that's one option. Another option, we would have to also set this value to false for the phone. Okay, another option is we know a difference between having one layout and two layouts, or one pane and two panes, is that with two panes we have this fragment that has an ID called plant detail container. Let me Control M so we can see that in higher def. The two pane is the only thing that has the frame layout with this specific ID. Let me copy that ID because I know we're going to need that in a second. Let's look at the default layout, the one that's used in the phone. You see, that's the difference between the two. One of them has that second frame. Let me expand this. We can see that a little bit better. One of them just has the fragment. That's the one we're using on our phone. The two-pane version has the fragment, and then it has a frame layout to the side. That frame layout has this ID. As luck would have it, we can say, hey, does something with this ID exist? And we do that simply with our find view by ID method. Control space to let it autocomplete. r.id. Okay, and here we go, plant detail container. Okay. Control 1, assign to new local variable. We'll call this we'll call it detail frame. Okay, so we store that in a local variable. Allow me to Control M so we can see this in high def. Now what we're going to do is, if this is not null, if detail frame is not null, then we know we're in two-pane. We know we're in a two-pane mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, if it's not null, okay, then we must be two-pane. Okay, two-pane equals true. Now notice I'm assigning a value true to a variable called two-pane, and I have not yet declared that variable. That's okay. Let's let Eclipse do some work for us. Control 1. and we're going to say create field two-pane, and it's going to know it's a Boolean, and there we are. So what we'll say is, if detail frame exists, well, we'll put it this way: detail frame only exists in two-pane mode. If it is not null, then it must exist. Exits exist. So we'll be able to use that Boolean down in our plant selected method. Now, gosh, what is this method? Remember this method from either video 3 or 4. I want to say it was video, 3 and 4 actually. We used it in both. In this method, we're getting a notification via a callback from our fragment. And our fragment is saying, hey, something was selected. Okay, and so what we're doing, and this is the default behavior that we see here, is assuming we're on a phone, we're switching from one activity to another. In this case, we only want to do that if we're in a single pane mode. So I'm going to say if two-pane, and open curly, close curly. We'll leave the rest of that to come in a moment. Else, the else part here is only going to execute if two-pane is false. Okay, and in other words, the else part will only happen, I'll put a note to this effect, the else part will only happen if we are not two-pane. In other words, if we are single pane. And I know some of that comment just went off the edge there. Okay, let's scroll over. There we go. Now you can see it. Now, our tabs are a little bit off, and I get kind of nitpicky about this. Let's Control A, Control I, and realign those tabs. Okay, whoops. Now, in the if two-pane, let's say we are two-pane. If we are two-pane, we're going to do a little share and reapply magic here. What we're going to do is we're going to borrow this logic we've already written in the Plant Detail Manager that instantiates the detail fragment, sets the GUID, passes the GUID to the detail fragment, and then loads the detail fragment. So a lot of this we're going to be able to reuse. Not verbatim. There are a couple changes we're going to make, and we know we don't like copy pasting. There are some cute ways we could get around this with an abstract class, but we'll leave that for a later video. So I'm going to go back to the, let's see, I'll just Alt and left arrow, which will take me backwards in Eclipse history, and two-pane, and I'm going to paste. Okay, I don't need this line here. This is where we're getting the GUID that was passed from one activity to another. We don't need that because guess what? The GUID's getting passed in up above. I'll eliminate that. Number 2, it looks like we're in good shape now, but we need to change one more thing. This RID Plant Detail Web View, that does not exist in our current layout, the one called Plant Results Manager. We need to change that to the Plant Detail Container. So I Control C, and I Control V, and I save. And now we're good. Now if we're two-pane, we're not going to navigate to another activity. We stay in the same activity. What we're going to do is we're going to create this fragment. We're going to tell it which GUID to use, and we are going to then swap that fragment in the right side of our screen. But only if we're two-pane. If we're not two-pane, we're going to continue with the behavior that we have always had. So let's save, Control M, and I'm going to right-click and I'm going to say Debug as Android Application. And once again, we're going to choose our tablet. When this is all done, we're also going to go back to our phone, make sure that that continues to work the same. That's part of it. We want to make sure that we haven't lost any functionality. So go back to the tablet here, give it a moment to load, and I'll pause, so we'll let it load. Okay, and we're live, so I put in our friend Redbutt. And I'm going to hit search. Okay, we see the list comes up on the left. I click, and this is the moment of truth. Let's watch what's going to happen here. We find the plant that I clicked. This is in the fragment. I'll mouse over that. You can see this is in the fragment. So we see the plant I clicked. We go to the managing activity, the activity that's managing this fragment, and we pass it that ID. Okay? Managing activity is going to get that ID. Oops. Looks like I went, let me hit play, sorry, one more time. Okay. Well, I went a little fast through that debugger. I think I hit play a little too much. But nonetheless, take a look at what's happened. You see we have list on the left, details on the right. Okay, I click another one. We'll see that again because as I did kind of step through that. I think I hit play a little too much. I click on Hearts of Gold. Now take a look very closely. Eastern Redbud Cercis canadensis. Our success criteria here is that this changes to something else. Okay, so plant, we're getting this from our fragment. I press play. Where do we go from there? We go to plant detail fragment. Okay, so we're passing it on to the plant detail fragment, and that is going to show something in our URL. I go back and we see that the detail is refreshing, and what do we see over here? Hearts of Gold Redbud. Okay, to make this go a little bit faster, I'm going to disconnect the debugger, and we'll click Silver Cloud. We'll see it should load with Silver Cloud. We'll see, let's see, sure enough, Silver Cloud Redbud, Forest Pansy, and we will see it loads with Forest Pansy Redbud. So sure enough, this is giving us a nice interactive experience, something that we can make very functional without constantly going back and forth on screens. So what we'll do now, that works as we wish. I'm going to right click, I'm going to debug as, and we're going to throw this on the normal phone to make sure that it continues to work as we hoped. And I know I'm running a little low on space on this particular phone, so fingers crossed that it does deploy. It looks like it is deploying. On this phone, we're expecting a toggle back and forth. So I click and I say Redbud, and I say search. Okay, Cercis canadensis. It's going to hit some breakpoints here. I still have the debugger running over here. Go ahead and let that play through. And what we're expecting is that this list gets replaced with a little web view. Okay, we'll let that go. That will take just a second. It's going to take a moment for it to load from the web. While that's loading, one thing I'm going to say is a major advantage of Fragments over the way we used to do things, which was a list activity, is that a list activity, there we go, there's our page. So you see it's still two different pages on the phone. A list activity has to extend from the class called list activity, and therefore we've used our one inheritance coupon. What that means is that we can't have a superclass base activity or something like that. A lot of times I'll do my menus in a base activity, or in other words, a superclass activity that I've defined. We don't have that option when we're using a traditional activity. But with fragments, we're separating this list activity concept from the, in other words, sorry, let me rephrase that. We're separating the list concept from the activity that manages that list. In other words, the fragment and the list are closely coupled, and the activity is not so closely coupled. It's managing that fragment. What I'm getting to here is that our activities are just plain old activities and can extend anything. So if we want, we do have an option to make a common superclass across all of our activities, and that's going to give us the ability to use this very valuable menu bar across the top. What I'll note about that is that in Android, Android discourages splash screens and it discourages menus, is like a separate menu page. In other words, what the Android quality guidelines say is that when you start your app, instead of asking the user where do you want to go, or instead of putting your logo up there for a while, what you should do is just take the user right to the screen the user wants to go to 80% of the time, and then give the user the option to opt out and go to a different screen. And that's what this action bar is helpful for up top. It gives us an ability to say, okay, boom, this is the screen that you probably want to go to. Oh, and if not, well, here are some other options. So in a future video, we'll take a look at how we can refactor for that. But for this video, I think we've seen that we have met our success criteria of having two fragments on one screen and having the ability to click on one and have it affect the other. One thing I will say is a bit inefficient that I might consider refactoring here is in the plant results manager, every time we click on a link, we're creating a new um, plant detail fragment. I would be tempted to see if I could reuse, if I could make it once and then just keep reusing it. And every time I reuse it, I just tell it to refresh with a different URL. So that might be an efficiency I'm going to do, but for the moment, I'm pretty happy with how this is. So the source code for this is freely available on GitHub. This is lecture number 5 of a series, which is in a playlist. Both the GitHub URL and the playlist are available on YouTube. As always, I welcome your comments, questions, suggestions, concerns, criticisms, and jokes. Thank you.